I'm on my way to work Monday morning, but I wanted to give a recap of the Genesee Valley Pathfinders Summer Solstice Campout. This video will also serve as a review for the new bike that I tried out on this trip, the Priority 600 ADX, which is a reimagined version of the iconic Priority 600X. A little bit about the Genesee Valley Pathfinders group. It's a group of cyclists who fall somewhere between roadies and mountain bikers. And let me just tell you, if you enjoy longer, slower ramblings on a bicycle with frequent stops for coffee breaks, jumping in swimming holes, this group is definitely your vibe. And I couldn't recommend it enough. If you're in Western New York, you should sync up with us and join us on the next ride. So on to the adventure. The group of us all rendezvoused at the southern end of Letchworth State Park, which is a fabulous state park here in Western New York. After a bit of lollygagging, which is like the MO of this group, in the best way, to be honest, we hopped on the bikes and took off. The first leg of our trip was on the Genesee Valley Greenway, which also happens to be a state park. This is a rail trail that spans 90 miles from Rochester, New York, all the way down to the village of Cuba in Allegheny County. The trail is amazing in all seasons, and today especially, it was much welcome shade on what would be an extremely hot day. We spent about 4 or 5 miles on the Greenway, which was a nice way to ease into the ride with a fully loaded bike. Here you can see the Pinion C12 gearbox, which was so quiet, couldn't be more pleased with how this performed, and the updated front suspension fork, Marzocchi. This fork provided more than enough cushion along the way, especially later on when we hit a lot of rocky descents. Eventually the Greenway shot us out into the sleepy little village of Nunday, where we stopped for some quick provisions and to adjust our bikes before the big climb out of the valley. This trip was extra cool because I got to meet Ryan here, who's on a Priority Apollo, and he also just happened to get it a few days before. So this trip was a good opportunity for both of us to try out our new bikes. Spoiler alert, he loved the Apollo. So here we are, beginning our climb out of Nunday on a few miles of paved road. And I'll just take a quick note here to say that the Marzocchi fork has a nice little feature, as most suspension forks do, where you can adjust the firmness of it. It's not a complete lockout, but it does significantly reduce the travel, which helps you maintain speed on asphalt surfaces. Really hard to tell on camera just how steep these hills are, especially on like a 95-degree heat index. But let me tell you, this Pinion gearbox, it's got gears and gears for climbing, and I can just slowly take my time up some steep ass grades with a fully loaded bike. And that really was the theme of the day. The 12 speeds on the Pinion gearbox, which is the heart of this setup, gave me more than enough ability to climb the steepest hills. There were several instances on this trip of hike-a-bike, because we were talking like 10 to 13% grade. And when you have 40 to 50 pounds of extra gear on your bike, it can be a little challenging, but having that lowest of the low gear on this was tremendous. The first climb topped out at Rattlesnake Hill, wildlife management area. We did not see any rattlesnakes, and this was a really pleasant section, mostly made up of gravel and forest access roads. A little bit of undulation, but not super steep, and it allowed us an opportunity to catch up and have some conversations with new people. At this point, we were probably about 2.5 hours out of Nunday. I mean, that climb took a long time. We did have a slight wrong turn and we had to backtrack a bit, but nothing too serious. So we were eager to get to the next town to fuel up and find a creek to kind of cool down in. Shout out to Maston's Food Market for letting us refill our water bottles and for having all of the best snacks for us to stock up on. So right after that, we stopped by the village park because there's a creek running through it that we all were dying to jump in. It was no joke, so hot out there. The opportunity to jump into any body of water was very welcome. After we recharged in the stream, we hopped back on our bikes out of Canaseraga and back up into the foothills. I want to make a note here about the gentle sweep back on these handlebars. It allowed me to sit upright for most of the ride, especially when I was sitting on the saddle, and the handle grips themselves are super comfy. Oh look, we got Ryan on the Priority Apollo. How do you like it?
I love it.
It's pretty sweet. It's like hour free of climbing. I'm properly wrecked, but it's beautiful. Check it out. Our last stop before camp for the evening was this creek, which gave us the opportunity to filter a whole bunch of water for drinking and cooking for that night and the following morning. We ended up camping at the spot of a former fire tower, and admittedly I didn't take too much footage. That evening I was pretty spent and I was focused on getting my food ready, my tent set up, and getting a good night's sleep because tomorrow was a bunch more riding. Oh look, it's tomorrow. That's me, waking up before everyone else. Shout out to my 5-year-old and my 3-year-old for conditioning me to wake up at ungodly hours. So I thought I'd get a head start. I packed up my tent. I made a little bit of oatmeal and some coffee. Cheers. Got all of my stuff back into my bags, and this is the perfect moment for me to talk about how freaking cool it is that this bike comes with a kickstand. I've been on several bike overnights before, and I haven't had the kickstand. And it's always like, where am I gonna lean the bike up? Or how am I gonna gently lay this bike down so I'm not smashing all the stuff in my bag? But with this bike, I mean, come on, you just flip the kickstand down and you're ready to go. Day 2 started out paying dividends with all the climbing that we did yesterday. We spent a good amount of the first couple miles heading downhill. I love this shot here because I think it gives a pretty good sense of just how steep some of the climbs were on the previous day. We stopped at Keeny Swamp for breakfast. Well, for me, it was breakfast number 2, but this was just a beautiful spot. And with the overcast sky, it was definitely a much more comfortable day for riding, for sure. We probably would have stuck around this spot for most of the day, but the rain came and had other plans, so we packed it up and we made our way over to the next town because we heard there was ice cream. The downpours sort of followed us throughout the rest of the afternoon, but it was a warm rain, so it wasn't a big deal, and we were going to go swimming anyways, so that's where we headed next. Jumped on the bikes and found this really sweet swimming hole with a rope swing, and this was like the perfect last stop for the day before heading back to Letchworth. Before I get into a few final thoughts on my first trip with the Priority 680X, here are some stats from the 2 days that we spent out bikepacking with the Genesee Valley Pathfinders. All right, so some final thoughts on this bicycle. I had a really great time on it. Fully loaded, it was extremely heavy, but the gearing was very appropriate for this type of ride and allows you to climb very steep hills and I imagine steep mountains as well. The pinion gearbox with the Gates carbon belt drive is such a winning combo, and I'm so stoked to have this now for its reliability and just how quiet it is when you're riding it. It's really pleasant. I think the 2.4-inch tires are a good compromise between some trail riding and if you have to ride on the road, you can get up to a pretty decent pace with them and maintain that without killing yourself. If I had to sum it up in 3 words, I think I would say reliability, comfort, and capability. You're gonna get all 3 of those things with this bicycle, and I'm really excited to see what adventures I'll take it on next. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next one.